Hey y'all, I came across something that I believe will be pretty edifying to the church here in Romans chapter 11. I'm studying about this law and grace thing, which seems to be one of the biggest topics of debate in the church today. And I came across something else that Paul said that stood out to me that I believe would be edifying to the church. And he's talking to the Gentiles in this chapter, in chapter 11, Romans chapter 11, verses 19. His audience is the Gentiles, and he's talking to them about Israel and how Yahuwah cut them off. And he's telling them what they should learn from Israel's relationship with Yah. And let's just go ahead and read it. Paul says, "You will say then, branches were broken off that I may be grafted in. Well said. Because of unbelief, they, Israel, were broken off, and you, the Gentiles, stand by faith. Do not be haughty, but fear. For if Yahuwah did not spare the natural branches, he may not spare you either. Therefore, consider the goodness and severity of Yahuwah." All right, now that last verse in that passage, that last sentence in that passage is what I want to talk about. Paul said, consider the goodness and severity of Yahuwah. See, that's the thing in the church today. We consider his goodness, but we never take into consideration his severity. All right, now this is important. We always talk about his grace, his kindness, his mercy. Those things are meant to lead us into repentance, right? We always talk about those things, but we never talk about fear in him. We never talk about his severity. And the reason that Paul is talking to the Gentiles about the severity of God is because he wants them to pay attention to what Yahuwah did to his own children. He cut them off. And he told them if he cut them off, then he'll cut the Gentiles off. He'll cut the Gentiles off also. And this is something that we have to take into consideration, because fear of God produces righteousness. Where there is no fear of God, there is no righteousness. You can't expect for people to continue to only preach kindness and grace and mercy and think that that's going to produce righteousness. That's not going to produce righteousness, because we also have to take into consideration the severity of the God that we worship, the God that we serve. So today the church is kind of watered down. Nobody wants to say anything that's going to scare people off. Nobody wants to say anything like that. So we kind of preach not we, but the modern day church kind of preaches a watered down Jesus. And that's the reason why the world is in the position it is in today, because there is no fear of God. People don't think that stuff is necessary. They don't think when it comes to stuff like that, like obeying God and fearing him and, following him and following his commands, people don't, oh, that stuff is not serious. We don't have to do that. You know why? Because there is no fear of God in their hearts. Could you imagine if we treated our wives and our husbands and our brothers and our sisters and our mothers and our fathers? Could you imagine if we treated them the same way we treated God? Like when it comes to our relationship with God, people say that it doesn't matter. We have grace and mercy. Could you imagine if you treated your wife like that? Just imagine I woke up today. You know what? I don't have to be loyal to my wife. I have God's grace and mercy. It's not that serious. It's not that important. I don't have to be loyal to my mother. I don't have to honor my mother. I don't have to honor my father, because I have his grace and his mercy. Could you imagine if we had that same mindset that we have with God against our loved ones? That's not love. That's hate. So we should not only take into consideration his grace and his kindness and his mercy, but like Paul said, not only his goodness, but his severity. And also, when Paul and Timothy wrote their letter to the church in Philippi, in Philippians chapter 2, Paul also said that we should work out our salvation with trembling and fear. Okay? Work out your salvation with trembling and fear. Why? Because we serve a real God. We serve the Most High. It's a fearful thing to be in the hands of the living God. But nobody wants to talk about that. They just want to talk about, sweet stuff, watered down stuff. And that's the reason why the church is in the position it is today. So work out your salvation with trembling and fear, and also take not only his goodness into consideration, but his severity. Y'all be blessed.